Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're zooming in on the massive global machinery that literally brings food to your table. We're talking about the business of meat. It's a completely staggering, multi-billion-dollar global industry, but you know the intense market forces and logistics behind it? They're usually completely invisible to us when we're just standing there staring at the meat counter in the grocery store. So today, we're going to map out exactly how this invisible market actually operates.
To instantly understand the extremely high stakes of our global food supply chains, just think about this number for a second. 79%. That is the percentage of meat requirements that Malaysia currently has to import just to meet its local consumption. They are far, far away from their target of producing 30% domestically, and because of this massive lack of local supply, they have to rely heavily on countries like India, Australia, Thailand, and Indonesia just to feed their own population. It instantly shows us just how vulnerable and, frankly, how interconnected our global food supply truly is.
So here is our agenda for today. First, we'll meet the livestock, and then we'll explore the livestock marketplace. From there, we'll cover the forces of supply and the demand equation. Finally, we'll look at the global meat trade and discuss overcoming supply shortages.
Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, Meet the Livestock, the agricultural foundations. Because to understand the market, we really have to understand the product first.
In the agricultural world, there is a very clear economic divide. It's almost like two different worlds. On one side, you have ruminants, think cattle, sheep, goats. These are generally produced by smallholder farmers. On the other side, you have non-ruminants, like poultry and swine. These operations run on a highly progressive, massive scale. To put that into perspective, non-ruminants contribute more than 80% of the ex-farm value in places like Malaysia, absolutely dominating the local production value.
Putting some faces to those categories, this biological distinction is absolutely crucial. Whether you're dealing with grazing animals that have complex stomachs or non-ruminants like chickens and pigs, that underlying biology literally dictates exactly how they are raised, processed, and ultimately sold.
Moving right along to Section 2, the livestock marketplace, where animals become assets. Selling a cow is way more complex than just a handshake at a farm.
Obviously, livestock has to be sold for producers to actually make a living, and the options for doing that are incredibly diverse. It totally depends on where you are, what kind of animals you have, and how many. You've got direct sales with absolutely no middlemen, terminal markets, traditional public auctions, and even modern electronic auctions to connect regions separated by huge distances. But there are two methods in particular that truly shape the large-scale meat industry today: future hedging and vertical integration.
Okay, let's dive into this. Future hedging is a vital agricultural tool. It's basically a legal document that calls for the delivery of livestock, but it locks in a future delivery price well in advance of the actual contract time. Companies use this as a shield. By setting a price right at the time of the agreement, it protects both the buyers and the sellers against wild market price swings. This is absolutely critical when you're dealing with highly priced animals, where a sudden spike in market volatility could literally ruin a business overnight.
Then we have vertical integration. This is when two or more steps of production, marketing, and processing are officially linked together, usually by a tight contract between the producers and the manufacturers. This system completely streamlines the journey from the farm to the supermarket, and it is highly dominant in the poultry industry. Get this, about 99% of all broilers, as well as a huge percentage of turkeys and laying hens, are grown and marketed through these vertical integration contracts. It's the whole shebang under one roof, basically.
All right, Section 3. Forces of supply pushing meat to the market.
So, think about this. What actually drives the price of livestock? When you're looking at a steak or a chicken breast in the store, what invisible forces decided that specific price tag long before the animal ever left the farm? Well, it essentially boils down to three main filters. First is the cash need by the producer. If a pastoralist urgently needs cash for something like schooling or medication, or if a prolonged dry season hits and grass dries up, we see forced sales. The farmer has to sell, which drives market prices down. Second is government policy. Favorable policies like subsidies or building developed truck routes will naturally increase the supply of livestock. On the flip side, restrictive taxes or central government monopolies artificially stifle the market. And the third filter is market demand itself. A highly efficient market transmits price changes quickly, leading to a highly responsive supply from the farmers.
Which brings us to Section 4, the demand equation, why we buy more meat.
So as countries develop, rising income levels mean increased purchasing power. Simply put, people just have more money to afford protein-rich foods. Add rapid population growth and intense urbanization into the mix, and that shift accelerates big time.
Urban dwellers typically consume far more meat and processed livestock than rural populations. Throw in cultural preferences, a growing awareness of health benefits, and better market accessibility thanks to improved transportation networks, and what you get is a massive, surging global appetite for meat. Now for Section 5, the global meat trade, the heavyweights. Because local demand is ultimately solved by international trade. Let's take a look at the major global players and see how they've actually specialized. The United States is an absolute powerhouse, known for churning out high-quality beef, pork, and poultry. Brazil leverages its huge amount of land and favorable climate to be one of the largest exporters of beef and poultry, supplying places like Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. Then you have China. They have a massive domestic market and are the world's largest consumer of pork, beef, and poultry, increasingly relying on imports to meet that staggering demand. Australia and New Zealand are famous for their incredibly well-regulated, sustainable livestock industries. Meanwhile, countries like Argentina have carved out a highly specific, premium niche as a top global exporter of high-quality, grass-fed beef.
And we certainly can't forget the European Union. In the EU's massive, strictly regulated meat sector, countries like France and Germany dominate the output. They contribute 18% and 16% respectively. That makes the EU an absolute heavyweight in global production and export, particularly when we're talking about bovine and pig meat.
Let's jump into our final section, Section 6, Overcoming Supply Shortages, Closing the Gap.
To ensure stable food supplies and avoid shortages, governments have to take a really multifaceted approach. There's no single silver bullet. The solutions start with increasing local production through farmer incentives, but they also have to utilize controlled importation to fill immediate gaps without accidentally crushing local producers. From there, it's all about improving logistics for more efficient distribution, strengthening the entire value chain from the processor all the way to the retailer, and crucially, adopting new technology. I'm talking about embracing everything from precision agriculture and automation to digital marketing platforms.
Let's see how this actually plays out in the real world by comparing a developing market with a highly advanced one. Let's look at dairy supply chains in Malaysia versus New Zealand. Malaysia relies heavily on small-scale, semi-automated systems and remains incredibly import-reliant. New Zealand, on the other hand, has achieved total global dominance. Why? Well, it's their massive scale and high-tech automation. Their processing involves treating milk with pasteurization, using mild heat to kill bacteria, which greatly extends its shelf life. They have incredibly advanced, government-supported research facilities and super powerful global relationships. Major companies in New Zealand even merged to form Fonterra, creating this massive cooperative with an unbelievable global reputation and reach. This perfectly illustrates how embracing automation, advanced research, and strategic corporate mergers can solve those supply issues and build true international powerhouses.
Which leaves us with a pretty massive thought to ponder. The next time you sit down to eat, ask yourself, how will technology and globalization change the origin of your next meal? Consider the massive, invisible global machinery, the hedging contracts locking in prices, the vertical integration streamlining production, the strict government policies, and the incredibly complex international trade routes that successfully brought that food to your plate. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.